Hello, everyone. This is Coach Tim Campsall, and I'm excited to have a fellow business owner from Indiana with us today. Something unique about my guest is he is a college football official. That's pretty cool. We're going to ask him to tell us a little bit more about that here in a minute. In his downtime, he loves to play sports like volleyball and basketball and pickleball, and he also enjoys reading, and he is most proud of his kids. It is my pleasure to welcome John to the show today. Hi, John.
Hey, Tim, I really appreciate you having me on. Thank you.
Well, hey, let's start with having you introduce yourself. So tell us your full name and a bit of your personal story, like where you were born, live, and about your family.
Yeah. My name's John Melind. I was born and grew up in Indianapolis. Uh, I have basically lived in the same neighborhood my whole life. I live about 5 blocks away from where I grew up, which makes it really nice for free grandparent babysitting. Um, I went to college at Wabash College. It's one of the two only all-male colleges in the country. Um, Had a great experience there. I was actually a religion major, which has nothing to do with what I'm doing now, but it was really interesting kind of field of study for me. Graduated, moved back to Indianapolis. I worked at Angie's List for a long time out of college. I learned a ton there. One of the things I learned eventually, though, was that I didn't want to be part of the big corporate world for forever. So, ended up switching out of that. Like I said, lived, almost right where I grew up. My wife and I have been married for be 10 years this year. And I have 3 kids, a girl and 2 younger boys. And they are also into lots of sports too. So I'm a do lighting and electrical by day, and I'm a chauffeur by evening.
I love it. And what's your wife's name?
My wife's name is Jenny. She's a fantastic realtor.
Wonderful. Awesome. So, John, tell us about being a football officiant.
Like you mentioned kind of in the intro, I just have always enjoyed being active. I played like 4 sports in high school. I still something that I do. I'm in a men's basketball league and a men's volleyball group. And so football was kind of my favorite sport always. I actually played 1 year at Wabash before I retired from doing that. And had always been kind of curious about what football officiating would be like. I wasn't sure by the time that I kind of got around to it if it was even feasible. I'd already had a few kids by then, and as you know, most football games are on the weekends, and the higher up in levels you go, those become games that are in Ohio or Pennsylvania or Wisconsin or something like that. So, luckily, I have a friend who is an NFL official, and he was nice enough to just kind of walk me through the entire process from how do I even go about getting my license to do high school to is it feasible to have a family as you move up levels and kind of what that path looks like. So, had a really good conversation with him, went back and talked to my wife and told her it was something I was interested in doing, and she was on board and supportive. And so, it's been 5 years since I started that journey. Started off doing just high school varsity football. And then over the last couple of years have started to move into some of the lower levels of college football. And have decided to try to take a replay track is kind of the term that they use. So at all, major college football games, there are multiple people that are in the replay booth that are reviewing every single play. You only know when they stop to review it, but they're clearing every single play, and they're part of, that they're seen as part of that officiating crew. So I learned about that. Indiana is actually a kind of a hotbed for football officiating. We have a lot of football officials in the state and a lot of people at higher levels that have done a really good job of bringing up kind of the next generations of officials. So
Very
uh,
cool.
a lot of people I could name that I'm grateful for that have helped with that.
Yeah, that's awesome. Thanks for sharing. Hey, what about a funny story? Is there something that your family likes to tell about you that you'd be willing to share with us?
Yeah. So my wife likes to tell this story. One of our early dates, we took some mountain bikes and went kind of over in the Butler area. Butler University sits kind of right between the canal, which is like in Indianapolis, and then the White River. And so there's kind of a lot of woods on both sides, and there's some really cool trails in there that, growing up, we would, ride back through there all the time. So my wife and I were riding bikes through these trails, and I'm riding my bike, and I got probably a stick that was only maybe this big, but it was a solid stick, and it got stuck right in between the spokes, and it hit that brake frame on the bike, which means that my bike stopped, on a dime. But the way that physics works is you don't stop if the bike stops. So I went over the handlebars. We had to fix my bike. She was just laughing hysterically, like I wasn't injured or anything.
Oh, good.
Um, but yeah,
Just your pride.
yeah. I'm like, oh, I'm going to show you all these places. And bam, now I'm on the ground.
Thanks for sharing. That's awesome. So, John, tell us, how did the business come about, and at what point did you have the confidence that you could run your own business?
So, I actually worked with my business partner now. We worked together at Angie's List, and he left, and kind of the wheels started turning for him on what he was going to do. I was about to have my second kid, and when you have babies, the first year is really fun, especially like in the morning time. Right after you have the baby, you've got 1 week doctor appointment, 2 weeks, 4 weeks. Like there's just a lot of stuff going on. And I missed a lot of that with my daughter.
Mhm.
And so, one of the nice things about owning your own business, you end up working a lot of hours and a lot of random late hours. But if you want to go to the doctor with your son in the morning at 8 o'clock, you definitely can.
Yeah.
So at about that time, I talked to him about this LED lighting thing. He had a relative actually in a more rural part of Indiana that had had a lighting company for a long time. Decided to kind of switch over from the kind of legacy fluorescent style lighting to start doing LED. And so kind of came up with the plan to use the same brand, to use the same manufacturer that we all worked with, kind of separate the state into different sections, and go about doing it. So um, I was pretty naive on how easy or difficult it was going to be to not only run a business, but just start one from the ground up, like no capital injection. Nobody had any, this was sitting at our, dining room table type business beginnings.
Yeah.
And so like I've always had confidence in myself to just kind of do whatever, athletics or school or work, or that's just kind of how I'm wired. But I would say at that time, I didn't know what it took to run a business, and I think that that's something that I've been learning over the last, um, 9 to 10 years. The biggest piece of it being the uh, finance and accounting piece
Mhm.
and how those work together. You can't just know accounting. Like that doesn't do you any good if you don't know, the finance interplay of how that works. So I've had a lot of help in that area over the last year or so, and um, I would say just within the last 6 months is when you know, really feel confident that I do. I've always, from an operations standpoint, like that's never been an issue. I managed a lot of people at Angie's List.
Yeah.
The customer service, no big deal. Like that's just always been a part of it. But the back end of running a business is where I had the biggest learning curve.
Yeah. Well, yeah, I hear that a lot. Folks will say, "Hey, Tim, I'm I'm an expert in my art or my craft or my trade, right? I know how to run the day-to-day business, but I don't have the knowledge of, right, of how to actually, be a business owner. And so we coin it as, the profession of business ownership is very different than, buying a job and knowing how to be, right, an electrician or a plumber or, a lighting expert, et cetera. So yeah,
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 100%.
it's great insight for those listening of, it's a lot of effort and time and energy to learn how to run a great business as opposed to just operate in the business. So
Yeah, I would say learn early too.
yeah. Hey, John, tell us a little bit more about the company. So, what's the name? What do you guys do? How do you help folks?
So a company name is LED Indy. Kind of as it sounds, when we started off, it was a lot of pretty simple LED retrofits. We do all commercial work, so it was a lot of schools, retails, office building, but just kind of very simple, taking the guts out of a fluorescent fixture, turning it into LED. Then a big part of what we do is work with the power utilities to access rebates that the customers get. That just kind of lowers their overall cost, improves their return on investment for doing it. So we did that. We grew that side of the business a lot and got into some pretty sizable projects. We relit the entire inside of the Colts practice facility.
Oh, wow.
We've done a one of the largest distribution centers in the country that Eli Lilly has. We've done some work down at the Salesforce Tower. So that side of it started pretty small, but we tackle some pretty notable good sized projects. And then over the last couple of years, we've turned the LED into a bit of an acronym. So we do lighting, electrical, and data.
Yeah.
So the electrical contracting side was kind of an easy spin-off of the LED. We're already in your space. We're already dealing with,
Yeah.
the electrical components of it. We had a customer where their head electrician was a little bit bored at that job, just kind of doing routine maintenance. He's a, 25-year electrical vet, master electrician, knows the code book better than I know the officiating rule book. And so when he left, we brought him on board to start up that electrical division. So they are very similar, but we still operate them a little bit separately. When we do lighting projects, we kind of have our own project managers and installers and technicians that do lighting. And James operates that electrical division kind of as its own animal. Everything from service calls to new construction, major remodeling, electric work. And then the data was another kind of spin-off of that. Again, we're in there, we're working with the systems. Data is basically just all of the low voltage power to buildings. So all of your internet connectivity, and the number of things that are in buildings that are running on those data networks is just increasing as time goes by. So access controls, kind of your door scan in and out runs on low voltage, security cameras, building management systems.
Yeah.
So on that data side, we can do everything from so similar to how an architect needs to create, kind of a plan and an as built for how we're going to build the building. There's basically data architecture as well in this building. How are we going to run everything, to be able to give connectivity to all these, people or workstations or, items or things like access controls. So everything from the design of it to the implementation and installation of all those things as well.
Yeah. Very cool. Awesome. I love how you kind of pivoted and reimagined, right, the LED acronym to allow your business to expand. That's awesome. So,
Yeah, well, really kind of got lucky that those things just happened to start with the same letter. We were thinking about it. I was like, man, we've been at this for a long time. I don't know if we want to do a full new logo.
Right,
You know,
yes.
is the data division, do we start that off as a separate brand or company? And one of my project managers, Scott, was like, well, LED is also lighting electrical data. I was like, book
Nice.
it. That's it.
I
Win.
love it. Yes. Hey, John, share a story where someone pushed you or inspired you that you could do it, even though maybe you weren't sure that you could, and the impact that person had on you.
So I will give this credit to just kind of like a whole group, and that is my family.
Mhm.
Um, I mean, my extended family for sure. We've always gotten a lot of support from my parents, but um, my wife and my kids really have believed in me that I could do this, especially in those, years one and year two when it was tough and it was a lot leaner than things are now. But
Right.
I've just always felt a lot of support and belief from them, and then just them existing is kind of enough. I'm trying to think of what the word is. Just kind of like forced support, right? Like I know that I want to,
Yeah.
provide for them. And so even without them pushing and being supportive, I just kind of have, my own internal drive to make sure that I'm doing that.
Yeah, you mentioned the first couple of years and earlier you talked about it being a little harder than you thought. It is statistically very true that figuring it all out and right and getting the dots to connect and getting some momentum and right, that it's a lot, right? There's long
Yeah.
hours and so having that support at home is so significant to right to allow us to get through those first couple of years.
Yeah. The LED technology at the time was so new, um, and the financial aspects of it, right, in terms of how much less power it's using and how much money that's going to save you. Now everybody there's LED all over the place, right? You probably have it in your house. But back then it wasn't nearly as prevalent. And so half of the battle was like, I'm not really going to save that much money, right? Even just getting people to believe that it's
Yeah.
true. But from
Yes.
starting a business standpoint, it's like, well, wait, we're selling this thing and like you're going to make all of your money back in 2 to 3 years. Any other investment in the world, you
Yeah,
would
right.
just for sure say yes, right? So we're starting the company. I'm like, this is going to be easy, right? Like everybody's going to do this.
Yeah.
We've done a lot of business since then, but um, not as easy as it sounds.
John, what's been your biggest learning as a business owner?
I think, like I mentioned before, that financial aspect of it,
Yeah.
uh, the accounting and finance and uh, managing cash flow, managing margin, figuring out
Yeah.
what are the levers that we can pull to increase profitability and what are, good ways to do those, have been the biggest learning part for me.
Yeah. I often quote Marcus from the show The Prophet. He says, if you don't know your numbers, you don't know your business. And it's so true, right? If you don't have a good understanding of the financial health of the business, it's hard to make business decisions, right?
Yeah. And you might not have a business in a couple of years if,
Right.
if you don't know those things.
Indeed, yes. Hey, we know that business success doesn't happen in isolation. So, John, tell us about one of the biggest challenges that you've had over the years and someone who came alongside you and helped you through that.
So, this has happened to us a couple times over the last few years. As I mentioned earlier, we get a lot of funding for our clients through these utility rebate programs.
Yeah.
Um, but they don't all run perfectly smoothly, right? And you'll have instances where, because the power companies all have these, annual goals of how much like energy reduction do we want to get off of our grid, and they use, these LED rebates to try to get people to use less power to do that. And so
Sure.
every once in a while, you'll have will be short of their goal, and then 3-month fire sale rebates have doubled, right? Or somebody opens some program. And so we've had a couple instances over the last few years where we've had to do an insane amount of work from just
Ah,
like an operations installation standpoint,
sure.
that end up being on timelines that weren't necessarily ours or even our customers. And it's not really one person, but anytime that happens, um, it is kind of like an all hands on deck. Everybody at the company needs to step up. So, um, you know, from ownership, like, you know, Trace and I, to our project managers, Scott and Casey, usually they take the brunt of that. Their kind of job is to help us execute everything that we sell.
Yeah.
They're the conduit between sales and the electricians. So, um, and every time that we've had that, everybody has stepped up, worked harder. Um, we're not a huge company, so everybody has a couple of roles
Yeah.
already.
Yeah.
But people have been willing to take on stuff that might not have been their responsibility just for the betterment of the company. I think that that's one of the big differences between working here and running this company versus, like a larger, big public company is that I really do feel like the people that we have here, are obviously invested in themselves, but genuinely care about the success of the company as well.
Yeah.
Um, and in those times is when that kind of stuff really comes out.
Yeah. Very cool. All right. Well, hey, John, I'm going to put you on the spot here a little bit and ask you to pick three people in your business owner journey that you're most grateful for them being there for you and helping with the business's growth. So, who are those three people and how they help you?
Okay, so I'm going to start with Brian Neal. He was the one who helped me get into officiating.
Hmm.
And also, just as I've grown, the business has been just a really great connector. He's connected to a lot of people from the crossover of both of those worlds, and has really helped me in both areas, like personal officiating, and business connections, getting linked up with other people that are, sales and operations leaders like me.
Yeah.
Um, Anytime you have like a group or network of sounding board, that's really impactful.
And I
Uh,
remember I saw a post that he got to officiate in a Super Bowl, right?
Yeah, he did the last Super Bowl that the Chiefs won. I think he even got a little Gatorade dumped him from the Andy Reid overflow. So
That's awesome.
yeah, uh, really cool guy. Very very process driven. He actually wrote himself out I think in high school. He started officiating when he was like 18. I want to do this by the time I'm this age. I want to be in the Big Ten by the time I'm this
Oh, very
age. I want
cool.
to do the Super Bowl by the time I'm 50, I think. And I think he hit it almost right on the nose. So
Very cool. All
yeah,
right. Who's
awesome guy.
person number two?
Person number two is going to be actually one of my fraternity brothers. His name is Marcus Mangus.
Sure.
He's another person that is very well connected in the Indianapolis area. He actually runs a large, like networking connection
Yeah, Accelerant,
organization.
right?
Yeah,
Accelerant. Yeah.
Accelerant. Yeah,
Ah,
he's and now he's starting up a new chapter in Ohio. So he's had a lot of, personal success, but has always been, there's kind of like people that as they go up and they get successful, they kind of forget everybody else. And then there's people that as they, make connections and get successful, pull other people up with them. And Marcus has always been a puller up. and really, really grateful for just like his friendship and, from a business perspective, kind of always being there.
Yeah. Awesome.
And then the third one, this is like kind of a cheat answer. And I'm not a member of this organization anymore because the timing didn't work out and the type of business that we do just kind of changed over time. But when we first started LED Indy, and we had no, nice corporate office like we have now, I was a member of a BNI chapter,
Yeah.
and that was the only time during the week that I was like guaranteed to interact with the same people,
Yeah.
right? So when Trace and I started getting this going, there were no real other employees. So
Sure.
that just kind of like weekly interaction with other people that were in business. A lot of those BNI businesses are smaller enterprises with, small teams and uh, just a good group of people.
Yeah.
Um, some of them were helpful with parts of running a business.
Mhm.
So accounting, printing material, things like shirts, insurance. There was, in the early days, that was a really nice group of support to be a part of.
I love it. That's awesome. Yes, I'm very familiar with BNI. I'm part of that organization as well. So, hey, John, as you think about the next 1 to 2 years, what's your number one priority or the challenge you have to solve in order to achieve your goals?
I think the big priority over the next couple of years is growing those electrical and data divisions. There's as much opportunity as you want to go get really in both of those. Electrical for sure, like
Yeah,
construction keeps happening, remodeling keeps happening.
right.
People need electricity. So that'll always be there, growing that team. And then the data side as well.
Yeah,
The the part that's a challenge to figure out is how to grow those things at the right way with the right people.
mm-hmm.
So in each of those divisions, kind of mapping out what the next 1, 2, 3, 4 hires looks like and the timing for when you bring those people in. Both of those things require a significant like business development aspect of them.
Yep.
But then you're also getting into large projects. And so then you need a large, project management labor, component to it too. So at the same time that we're trying to run everything, keep the lighting
Yeah.
going,
Yes.
keep the cash flow wheel going, because a lot of these rebates, it's not, they don't pay us as quickly as a customer does sometimes. So managing all that and adding people in at the right time. Like I said, there's no private equity in this
Yeah.
company. No
Yes.
one's dumping $500,000 in to pay for, three people's salaries while we build it up. So we really kind of have to add to those strategically.
Yeah, yeah, there's definitely a shift that happens from, getting the business to be successful and then, right, scaling a successful business and that, right, the complexities and the nuances of a scaling business versus an initial growing business. And you mentioned a few of them, right? It becomes more about people and processes, right? And timing in terms of when's the right time to invest in the next hire and then the next hire and what are the processes and procedures that need to be in place to support that growth? So, yeah, very
Yep.
exciting times.
Yeah.
Hey, John, last question. Jim Rohn said that we become the average of the 5 people that we spend the most time with. So, as you think about that quote, what advice would you have for business owners who feel like they need to do it on their own?
I always prefer to be the dumbest person in the room. Um, I don't consider myself dumb at all, but the opportunities for the most growth are when you surround yourself with people that are way smarter than you. I would say don't be afraid to hire people that are way smarter than you. That's great. Like if everybody that works for you is a level up, like you're winning. That's good. So whether it's hiring or just finding a, community network sounding board type people, organizations that you choose to be a part of, industry specific stuff or things like BNI. Um,
Yeah.
you know, there's no reason to have an ego. Going places where you're the top dog, it might feel good, but it's not, it doesn't really do anything to,
Yeah.
kind of keep pushing or pulling you up. So, um, you know, get comfortable with, being uncomfortable and
Yeah.
getting
There's
yourself
a
into those type of
there's
situations.
there's a phrase that I often repeat that talks to that, and it's that growth never happens in your comfort zone.
Yep.
So if you do want to grow your business and take things to the next level, exactly what you just said, right? We have to get comfortable being uncomfortable and continue and just stretch ourselves and learn different things and right and expand, expand what our knowledge is so that we ultimately expand our comfort zone, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, very cool. I love it. John, it sounds like you've been blessed with some incredible people in your business owner journey. If they were all here on the show today, what would you want to say to them?
Um, I, just lots of thank yous. I try to do it as I go too. Send notes or, even just short emails or texts or comments of, hey, appreciate you. I try to do that stuff in real time. I think it's impactful. But thank you. Thanks for believing in me or pretending like you did, so that I so that I thought so. Um, you know, yeah, I don't know anything crazy specific. It's a large group. I would just I'm not very good in those situations. I'd probably cry or something and say thank you.
I love it. Awesome. John, it's been a pleasure speaking with you today. Thanks so much for being on the show.
Yeah, thank you, Tim.
Thanks for listening to the Self-Made is a Myth show. Please help spread this movement by liking and subscribing to our show and following us on Facebook and LinkedIn. To join our movement, go to bemadtogether.com. Okay, folks, that's a wrap. Please pay it forward and be sure to tune in next time to the Self-Made is a Myth podcast.